Well, thank you very much. And we were speaking about individuals, and I certainly think that Professor Gilbert is an individual. And his talk also brings to my mind a story of when the life really begins. There was a conversation between an Orthodox priest, Catholic priest, and a rabbi. And the Catholic priest said that, well, I think the life begins when the sperm meets the egg. Well, the Orthodox priest, well, I'm not sure. Maybe it's when the fertilized egg attaches the wall of the uterus. Then the life begins. And the rabbi said, oh, holy brothers, the life begins when the children leave home and the dog dies. So I am at that position. Well, I'm going to take a medical view, and in recent years I've also thought that why the medical community is so conservative and not really working effectively with biologists, with ecologists, and with people who have a wider view of what is happening here. Maybe you could put it, because it's causing some crackies. Well, and that is because we doctors, medical doctors, we are trained to see patient by patient, from one patient to another. That's our job. If Professor Gilbert comes to my office, I am taking care of Professor Gilbert and not why the life begins on Earth. So, and that makes us conservative, and also because a big money, the taxpayers' money, go to the health sector, we need evidence-based, what is working and what is not. This all makes us a bit conservative. But we are facing new challenges, as we heard in the previous lecture, really new challenges. And if we take a disease view, if we want to reduce a burden of some public health issue, we should improve the management and the effective diagnostics and get the patients better, patient by patient. But then the second point, if we really want to prevent the burden and not only reduce the burden in the society and do work in long term and take the step from treatment to prevention, we should know the real causes of the problem. What are the true causes, and we should be able to tackle them. So diseases, they do change. I started my career as a pulmonologist, and I was taking care of tuberculosis. And think about the situation in Finland in 1930s. Poor Finland was building 17 big hospitals here in this country because of one disease and one disease only, tuberculosis. And now it's almost gone. And that is because of the cultural evolution and discovery of antibiotics and better living conditions, but it may become back. It may become back along with the expanding antibiotic resistance and also the immigrant problem. But here I show you how the diseases are changing. There are these kind of conditions which are on increase: allergic conditions, inflammatory bowel diseases, cancers or malignant diseases, diabetes, celiac disease like here, autoimmune diseases where the body immune system is not being able to make a difference of self and non-self. And even these kind of conditions like non-Hodgkin disease, which belongs to the malignant disease family. So there is a change in public health concern, and it's moving to those conditions which we call with the name of non-communicable diseases. And we could even say that they are a public health emergency, but in slow motion. They are not that dramatic as heart attacks, for example, which then draws the attention. But these are not drawing the attention, they come slowly. But think about the burden. If a child gets type 1 diabetes at the age of 4 and dies because of the complications after nephrectomy at the age of 72, think about the price tag along the lifespan. Well, some 6-7 years ago, we had a coffee with Ilkka Hanski. Everybody knows Ilkka, who sadly passed away about a year ago. And then we made a very, very simple question. We see here the living planet index going down and reflecting the shrinkage of biodiversity, and at the same time the increase of these non-communicable conditions, allergy here as an example. And we made a very, very stupid basic question, is there also some other connection between these megatrends than the timely connection? Is that only something which is happening in this time? Well, here you see our study group. Here is Ilkka Hanski, 2014. There is Lasse Ruokolainen. Here is Lars Paulin and Kaisa Koskinen from Viikki campus. And we were enthusiastic. We were thinking that, hey, come on, we are going to do some new things. And look at this slide. We are now operating in the Karelia area on the Finnish side and on the Russian side, which are very close to each other. The distance between the research sites were only about 180 kilometers, so the same geoclimatic conditions, but very different lifestyles and partly environment. On the Russian side, they were living the same kind of life than the Finns used to live in the small-scale farming in countryside in 1950s. Well, here you see the differences in the prevalences of asthma, hay fever, and on the Russian side, hay fever, so sensitization to pollen, was almost non-existent among school children compared to the Finnish school children. And then even more interestingly, if you look at adults and those who were born in 1940s and compare them to the younger generations coming up to those who were born in 1980s, you see that on the Russian side, there is no real increase in this example of sensitization to perch pollen. Now is the perch pollen season here in Finland is just starting. However, on the Finnish side, there is almost a linear increase in the sensitization rate when we come to the older generations to the younger generations. So if we really want to take the step from treatment to prevention, we should understand what is causing this different and pretty dramatic development in such a short period of time. So, and it's not only concerning allergy, this difference between Finnish and Russian Karelia was also concerning other chronic conditions like diabetes, and these are published data. So last September, there was news in the biggest newspaper in Finland, Helsingin Sanomat. There in Russian Karelia, there was an election. the people are satisfied with small things, and a very nice figure where they are taking their own food there in the backyard, they are growing their fruits and vegetables, and they are living this small-scale farming life, very independently in terms of food production, in terms of energy use, and so forth. Very different lifestyle from what we see here on the Finnish side. Well, now, okay, let's take an example of the medical field and using asthma here to make a series of questions. So if I ask you, how many of you do have some kind of an allergy? Hay fever, asthma, atopic dermatitis, sensitization to pollen or foods or what? Well, come on. Look around, my friends. Look around. Almost half of you. 40%, I would say 30-40% at least. Hey, this is crazy. We are becoming sensitized to our natural home, our original home. Why is that? Why is the perch pollen causing an inflammatory response in your nasal mucosa? When the pollen is releasing the proteins, our immune system is not able to make a difference between danger and non-danger and attacks and pushes an inflammatory response. There is no biological sense in that. So I take you now one of my worst cases of asthma. Look at that. In the morning, the peak flow, the capability of blowing out was so low that there was a life-threatening situation in many of those mornings. In the afternoons, the situation is better, but there is a huge fluctuation of the lung function over time, and this is a clear sign of very difficult, uncontrolled asthma. All right. Then the question is, what is causing this lung function abnormality, so characteristics to asthma? All right, the first answer is there is an inflammatory process. There is an inflammatory process which we can see even with our naked eye through the bronchoscope. There is the mucosal swelling and redness, there is increase of mucus compared to the normal view to the bronchi. And when we look at in the light microscope, we see that under the lamina propria, there under the epithelium, there is a huge influx of inflammatory cells. So there is an inflammation. There are the eosinophils and neutrophils and all that. There is a huge inflammatory response which is behind this functional abnormality, what we call in medicine asthma. Okay, but what is the next question? What is causing the inflammation? What is causing the inflammation? And then we come to an answer, lack of immune balance. And this comes from the Karelia group works published in 2014, and there are other papers on this, but showing that that in patients or individuals who are sensitized to perch pollen or some other allergen, we call them atopics. And compared to the healthy ones, there is a clear, distinct difference in the how these compartments of innate immunity work. If we use so-called principal component analysis, and we move here on the x-axis on this side, we see that in the healthy person, if we move here, also there is a movement on the other principal component on the y-axis. So the balance is all the time, it's kept. The balance is there. but in the allergic asthmatic individual, when you move here, you don't move here. The balance is gone. You are in this kind of a situation where the immunity compartments are not working in a balanced way. And this is repeatedly seen when analyzing the different cytokine functions between the healthy and the allergic individuals. So there is a lack of immune balance. So the next question is, what is causing the immune imbalance? What is causing this lack of immune balance? Why the so-called T helper cells are dominating there in the allergic individual and do not come back to the normal state? Well, then we come to this kind of answer. And Lasse Ruokolainen around there. Where are you, Lasse? Here. There you are, Lasse. You are welcome to comment and correct when I say something wrong. Well, anyway, Petri Auvinen, Lasse Pauliin, and co-workers, and then Lasse Ruokolainen, they have made these analyses. And look at this. This is the skin microbiome on the Russian side. So the school children there on the Russian side compared to the Finnish side. There is a huge and statistically very significant difference in the richness and the diversity of this microbiome. Well, there is another picture, and this paper is published quite recently, here where you see in another kind of analysis the same difference. The skin bacteria, Russian side, Finnish side, and only 100 kilometers apart, these research sites. This is a huge contrast. And nasal bacteria, same kind of a contrast. Nasal fungi, less contrast there. Well, what is this different microbiome then causing? These are unpublished data by Harri Alenius in our group, who is now a professor in Karolinska, but some preliminary observations. That when he looked at transcriptomics, how the leukocyte gene expression is reflected here on the Russian and the Finnish blood samples, he was able to observe that in the Russian young people, the innate immunity genes are downregulated compared with the Finnish young people. There is a very big difference in the gene expression patterns between the Finns and the Russians, living in different kind of an environment and lifestyle. And if I try to make it simple, on the Russian side, the guardian angels on the barriers, they are alert, they are upregulated. But the real army force, they are silent, the real army force. Because the guardians are not giving an information or signal to the army force that now you have to attack and now you have to work. On the Finnish side, on the other hand, the guardians are not very good. They are not really guarding the borders. And the army force, they are kind of a little bit nervous all the time. So that's what we call low-grade inflammation. And these patients with non-communicable diseases, they show very characteristically, they show signs of low-grade inflammation. Because the army force is a little bit nervous. Is there something dangerous coming or not? And we see this difference in the gene expression. Well, let me take another example. If we have atopic dermatitis, which is a skin inflammation, and if there is the normal skin microbiome, That is, there is a diverse and rich microbiome if your skin is silent and everything is okay. But when there is an exacerbation of the inflammation on the skin, there is a dominance of a few, especially the staphylococci, they take the power. So I could say that health is democracy, when disease is dictatorship. And you could even make correlates to the politics. Populism, dictatorship is a disease. A healthy society is democratic, it's diverse, and it's rich. Well, maybe it's even in the human society that when these opportunistic microbes, when they take the dominance, their biological role is to turn the organ back to the natural circulation. But now we doctors, we intervene with corticosteroids and antibiotics and push down the inflammation, and we kind of prevent the normal procedure which should take place. Well, a few words of biodiversity, which of course you know much better. But if you go to a pristine rainforest, you don't see many butterflies there. I am a butterfly enthusiastic, so I know something about them. But when you see the individual butterflies, they are all of different species. That is biodiversity. And if you take another example, and this is here from Viikki campus, this is a dust sample taken in the barn and compared to the Helsinki house dust sample. And here in the barn dust, you see the diversity of the microbes. There are a lot of species, but with small numbers. A lot of species, but with low numbers, and that is diversity. Well, we look at that with Ilkka Hanski, Lasse Ruokolainen and co-workers, how this diversity around the homes of these teenagers in Karelia, how it correlated to their microbiota, immune function, and health. And we were able to observe, in terms of flowering plants and land use types, that the high biodiversity was correlated to the diversity of skin microbiota. So the more biodiverse the environment, the richer was the microbiota, the stronger was the innate immunity, anti-inflammatory cytokine expression, and the product was a healthy child. Diverse environment, diverse microbiota, strong immunity, health. And then Lasse Ruokolainen not only looked at the Karelia cohort, but also two other cohorts, and was able to see that when just looking the land use type in 3 kilometer diameter of the homes of these individuals, he was able to show that the more diverse was the environment, the less was the risk of allergy. And this was not very clear in the young ones because they are not very well expressed, the allergies. At that age, they are most expressed in teenagers when all the kind of a genetic potential has been taken out. So you see that this correlation is better there in 6-year-olds, and in Karelia study, very clear correlations when you take those up to their teenage. Well, then the question was that what is causing the impoverished of the microbiota, and that is changes in environment and lifestyle. Very practically, what we drink, what we eat, what we breathe, and what we touch. All that is all the time. It's having an effect 24 hours on the microbiome, on the immune system, and on its capability to make a difference between self and non-self, and danger and non-danger. Well, then comes the fifth question. What is causing the changes? And we have been dealing with these issues on those three publications which you can find here. But what is causing these changes? And we come to the biodiversity hypothesis, population explosion, the fastly escalating urbanization all over the world, changes in lifestyle and nutrition, biodiversity loss both on macro and micro level, poor microbiome, dysbiosis in skin, gut or airways, and like we heard in the metabolome, 1/3 of these products are in fact derived from bacteria, causing immune dysfunction, inflammatory responses, and finally the patient is in doctor's office. This is a whole long story before we are prescribing antibiotics, corticosteroids, antihistamines, and whatever. They are helping the symptoms, of course, but they are doing nothing for the real reasons for this public health concern what we have in society. So we are dealing this kind of a big bunch of conditions which I already mentioned. Allergy and asthma has been in our focus because we have been able to look at those things, and they are kind of an indicator disease group here, but there are a lot of others, and they are all characterized by microbial imbalance, long-term immune dysfunction, and low-grade inflammation. So to make it very simple, the biodiversity hypothesis is saying that contact with natural environments enriches human microbiome, promotes immune balance, and protects from allergy, and very probably from other non-communicable diseases. But I must say that these news altogether are very new. We have been looking this for about 6 years, and in fact, if you look at the international literature, in some of these issues, we are the first. So this is just recent years, and we have just been scraping the surface. In fact, well, your body is an ecosystem, and that's what we heard in Professor Gilbert's lecture. But here we are. There is the human DNA, which is connected with the environmental metagenome, and the new focus of this, the focus of the new research and science is very much on this microbiome, which is mediating the crosstalk between human DNA and the environmental metagenome. So it even might be said that is this really been the missing link? We have been using the expression not really in this context, and we have been using the word normal flora. But in new technical equipments and DNA sequencing becoming cheaper and easier to do, has really revealed that this normal flora, now the human microbiome, is extremely important. It's kind of our second genome. And we have, in a way, externalized many of the preventive functions and the survival functions to that second genome. And this is now the cutting-edge science where it's going. Then you might ask that what about the genetics? We have also been looking with an Australian group the genetics of the Karelian samples, And very shortly, these genetic differences between the Russians and Finns do not explain. We have also looked at the chemicals, the common environmental chemicals, measured the serum concentrations for 13 common environmental chemicals. They do not explain. This must be a question of the microbiome, disconnection from the soil, microorganisms, changes in immune function, which is causing this epidemic. Well, but of course the genetic architecture is very, very important. This is my family. There's my granddaughter, Filippa, having hay fever, already at the age of 2 years, my son, who is a dentist now, and my wife, Ulla, and they all have hay fever. So you know, the girls, they come to their fathers. He's now nearly 40 years of age, but here at the age of 8 years. But the girls, they come to their fathers, and the boys, they come to their mothers. So nothing wrong with my genes. My point is that the genetic architecture then kind of dictates partly what kind of a manifestation of the disease we get, whether it's an inflammatory bowel disease or allergy or type 1 diabetes or what we are getting, what we are predisposed. Then we have in Finland, we have been running the so-called Finnish allergy program, which is coming to an end the next year, so we know already much of the results. But there we have been taking the natural step, meaning that we have been changing the avoidance strategy to tolerance strategy. The idea of the whole program is to change the avoidance strategy to tolerance strategy. And here you can see what we are meaning. I'm not going to any detail on this, but what we eat, what we drink, what we touch, what we inhale, and we also recommend natural childbirth, meaning vaginal delivery, breastfeeding at least 4 to 6 months. Antibiotics should be restricted. They are very important, life-saving, but they should be restricted, their use. And then there are the possibility of microbial supplementation, like with probiotics, prebiotics, symbiotics. There are possibilities, but they do not replace the true natural contact, which results to rich and diverse microbiota and immune balance. At this point, shortly, that we often think that this is most important in childhood to train the immunity. That is true, but it never stops. My immunity, Professor Gilbert's immunity, they are very, very alive still. And that is because in the innate immunity, which is the big part of the iceberg, it's very difficult to create permanent memory cells. We have to train the immunity throughout of our life. And that's how we get also a strong acquired or adapted immunity. For example, if we get measles once, we don't get it another time because we have the permanent memory cell. But we need the rehearsal and exposure throughout our life. So also for the elderly, And here you see some of the results of the Finnish program. We have been able to put down the severe allergies, reducing work-related allergies, improving tolerance. For example, allergy diets in daycare. Here in Helsinki capital area, they have been put down in 8 years' time of 40%, and we are being able also to reduce the costs of allergy and asthma. And this is now very hot topic internationally, because this is the first time ever that some of these diseases, the burden has started to decline. And even our Helsingin Sanomat says here that allergiohjelma taitaa toimia, the allergy program seems to work. They are a little bit hesitant. Is this really true or not? Well, and what is happening now, we are trying to expand the idea to all non-communicable diseases, and we published a paper this January where we tried to take the natural step to make the prevention a real part of the Finnish public health campaigns. Lasse Ruokolainen wrote a very, very nice figure of the inner and outer layer of biodiversity, which are totally interdependent, and all life is interconnected. And that idea we also got, both of us, from this Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, where Leonardo, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, saw that the human body is kind of a cosmography of the microcosm. He believed the workings of the human body to be an analogy of the working of the universe, and that is true. Thank you very much.